The dollar is dying, and Trump is holding the match. It's not speculation anymore, it's crisis. The U.S. dollar is falling faster than it has in over half a century. Over 10% wiped off its value in just 6 months. And the culprit isn't a global recession or foreign interference. It's Donald J. Trump. The self-proclaimed master negotiator has become the architect of America's economic unraveling. While the world watches the dollar bleed, Trump blames everyone but himself, Jerome Powell, China, even Canada. But the truth is, the chaos stems from within.
If you're done watching corrupt elites rig the system and leave you behind, subscribe now. If you want real talk, raw truth, and zero spin, this is your channel. If you're ready to fight back, hit that subscribe button and stand with us.
Trump's obsession with tariffs, economic intimidation, and public spats with the Federal Reserve didn't just erode investor confidence. It obliterated it. Foreign governments are dumping U.S. debt. Private investors are looking to gold and crypto. And meanwhile, Canada's Mark Carney is quietly laying down the blueprint for a post-dollar global economy. Carney's silent revolution. While Trump fans the flames of fiscal instability, Carney builds. He doesn't posture. He doesn't threaten. He reforms. Canada, under Carney's guidance, has been focused on internal economic sovereignty, eliminating interprovincial trade barriers, investing in domestic supply chains, and stabilizing its currency through disciplined fiscal policy. The result? A Canadian dollar that's gaining strength as the U.S. dollar nosedives. Carney sees what Trump never could. The future belongs to economies that cooperate, adapt, and earn trust, not those that scream, sanction, and stumble through one crisis after another. Trump's economic civil war. By treating allies like enemies, Trump didn't just isolate America diplomatically. He strangled it economically. His tariffs on Canadian auto parts, steel, and aluminum backfired spectacularly. U.S. manufacturers were hit with higher costs. Assembly lines slowed. Union jobs vanished. And for what? A few applause lines at a rally? Trump turned the North American economic engine into a battlefield. He imposed 5% tariffs on Canadian vehicles, ignoring decades of integrated production across Detroit and Ontario. The result? Chaos. Automakers were forced to ship production to Mexico or overseas. Car prices soared. Workers paid the price. All while Trump bragged about bringing jobs back. The Fed fight and Wall Street panic. No president in modern history has so openly attacked the independence of the Federal Reserve. Trump repeatedly humiliated Chair Jerome Powell, demanding rate cuts that defied economic logic. Investors weren't amused. The market needs stability, not a tantrum-driven monetary policy. Confidence plummeted. Foreign capital began fleeing. Credit agencies issued warnings. Trump's interference triggered tremors across the financial world. Every time he tweeted about the Fed, the markets dipped. Every insult hurled at Powell chipped away at America's credibility. Meanwhile, Carney championed central bank independence, reinforcing investor confidence and insulating Canada from similar turbulence. Canada's strength through unity. Under Carney, Canada pursued a different path, unity. He tackled one of Canada's oldest economic inefficiencies, interprovincial trade barriers. By harmonizing regulations between provinces, Canada unleashed internal economic growth without relying on volatile external partners. This wasn't flashy. It didn't make headlines. But it worked. It created jobs. It lowered consumer prices. It sent a signal to the world. Canada is stable, strategic, and self-aware. Carney built trust while Trump destroyed it. Debt bomb. America's time is ticking. Under Trump, the U.S. national debt soared past $37 trillion. Annual interest payments exploded to nearly $1 trillion. That's not policy. That's malpractice. And the credit markets know it. Moody's slashed the U.S. outlook. Bond yields spiked. Inflation became the new norm. Carney, by contrast, kept Canada's deficits in check. He didn't rely on debt-fueled tax cuts for billionaires. He invested strategically, ensuring that government spending delivered real economic returns. Canada stayed resilient while Trump mortgaged America's future. A post-dollar world? Carney's quiet coup. Carney has long been a vocal advocate for diversifying the global financial system. He's proposed digital currency reserves, global carbon pricing, and alternatives to U.S.-centric trade. While Trump clings to a weakening dollar and rails against a global order, Carney is helping design the next one. More countries are looking to de-dollarize. Energy contracts are being signed in euros and yuan. Central banks are stocking up on gold. The dollar is losing its grip, not because of foreign enemies, but because of domestic incompetence. And in this vacuum, leaders like Carney are quietly stepping in. Currency carnage. Trump's fiscal fantasy meets global reality. Let's be clear, this isn't a natural economic cycle. This isn't an unfortunate downturn. This is engineered collapse. And the architect is a man who bragged about banqueting casinos, Donald Trump. Under his watch, the U.S. dollar isn't just dipping, it's free falling. Not because of market forces, but because of market fear. Fear of his next tweet, fear of his next insult, fear of his next irrational policy announcement. Trump treated the global financial system like a hostile negotiation room. He threatened allies. He destabilized central banks. He inflated debt to unsustainable levels. He governed like a gambler, not a guardian. And now, the chips are gone, the house is on fire, and he's still bluffing like he's in control. Carney's currency game. Discipline, not delusion. Mark Carney understood something Trump never did. Currencies reflect confidence, and confidence is built on trust, transparency, and discipline, not slogans, not stunts. While Trump battered the Fed, Carney backed the Bank of Canada. While Trump flooded the market with debt-fueled stimulus and boasted about stock tickers, Carney worked quietly to strengthen long-term fundamentals: labor participation, energy independence, and regulatory clarity. The result? As investors flee the dollar, many are turning to currencies like Canada's, small, stable, and increasingly sovereign. Conclusion: a tale of two futures. Trump's America is becoming a warning. Carney's Canada is becoming a model. One is driven by chaos, corruption, and confrontation. The other by strategy, solidarity, and sovereignty. As the dollar falls and the debt rises, the question is no longer who will lead, it's who can be trusted. And on that front, Carney speaks softly but carries the world's confidence. Trump just yells. And nobody's listening anymore. Trump's trade ultimatum: 35% tariff shockwave. On July 4th, while Americans celebrated independence, Donald Trump dropped an economic bombshell across the northern border. A sweeping 35% tariff on all Canadian goods entering the United States, effective August 1st. No explanation, no negotiation table, no warning, just one declaration: comply or crumble. This wasn't trade policy, it was economic blackmail. And it didn't scare Canada. It awakened something stronger. Canada's first reaction: national outrage. Within hours, the markets wobbled. Toronto's TSX dropped. Ontario-based supply chains froze. And then the real news hit. Emergency air ambulances in Toronto were grounded. Critical American-made components were stuck in transit. That's right. Trump's tariffs didn't just spike prices. They risked lives. But instead of surrender, what followed was a wall of defiance. Ontario is mobilizing like never before. Emergency funding is being reallocated to shore up domestic production of critical auto parts. Premier Doug Ford announced Ontario. Premier Doug Ford stood in front of Queen's Park and said, "We've depended on the U.S. for too long. It's time to end it. Ontario will not be pushed around." Unifor and the workers pushed back. From Windsor to Oshawa, the anger was visceral. Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, didn't hold back. President Lana Payne called the tariffs economic extortion, designed to force Canadian jobs south of the border. Trump thinks we'll trade our jobs, our industries, our dignity, for what? Regulatory shortcuts in Indiana? Forget it, she declared. And the workers? They cheered, because they knew this wasn't just about car parts. This was about sovereignty. Trump's real plan: hollow Canada's industry. This wasn't just a trade war. It was industrial warfare. Trump's White House insiders weren't even hiding it. Leaks confirmed the game plan. Use tariffs to pressure companies into moving operations south, where Trump promised fast-track approvals and deregulation. This was never about balance. It was about control. Trump wanted to steal Canada's factories, and he thought we'd just hand over the keys. Mark Carney, quiet, calculated, strategic. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney wasn't ranting. He was working. Behind closed doors, his office accelerated talks with India, South Korea, and the EU. Emergency funding began flowing to provinces preparing domestic replacements for U.S. suppliers. Carney didn't scream. He didn't tweet. He executed. But critics still press him. Why hadn't he acted sooner? Why was the Canadian government caught off guard? Carney responded in his usual tone. We prepare for the long game. Deadline diplomacy. The July 21st mirage. Trump's administration dangled a deadline, July 21st. Canada had to get in line, where the 35% tariffs would hit full force. But trade veterans weren't fooled. This is a negotiation, said one former NAFTA negotiator. It's an ultimatum. There's no table, no terms, just bullying. So Carney did the one thing Trump didn't expect. He waited. Domestic shift. The fortress economy rises. Doug Ford's rallying cry for a made in Ontario economy gained traction fast. Soon Alberta was pledging to keep oil processing on home soil. Quebec accelerated plans for battery metals and pharmaceuticals. The new mantra? Build here, stay here, thrive here. Even ordinary Canadians joined the movement. By Canadian, signs went up in grocery stores. Social media exploded with lists of local brands. Farmers' markets reported record demand. What Trump triggered was a modern-day economic resistance. Supply chains disrupted, lives at risk. Tariffs aren't abstract when they affect hospitals. The grounding of air ambulances in Toronto shocked the public. Supply chain delays meant essential American-made equipment couldn't be installed in time. Imagine a child needing emergency surgery delayed because Trump wanted leverage. The public didn't just get angry. They got loud. Washington's real grudge, Canadian independence. At the heart of the crisis lies a decades-old grudge. Trump's trade allies have long resented Canada's supply management system, especially in dairy. They hate Canada's digital service taxes. They want open access. No barriers. No sovereignty. And now, they're using tariffs to get it. Carney, to his credit, isn't giving in. Farmers rallied to defend supply management, calling it not a system, but a survival tool. If Canada folds now, it sets a global precedent. Powerful countries can dictate domestic policy through brute force economics. Retaliation coming. Smart, surgical, strategic. While Canada has been calm, it hasn't been idle. Plans are in motion. High-value U.S. sectors like pharmaceuticals, software, and select agriculture are being mapped for counter-tariffs. The goal, pressure U.S. industries in swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, where Trump needs support. One insider said, "We won't match them punch for punch. We'll go for the pressure points." Missed opportunities and public frustration. But not everything is smooth. Critics of Carney point to diplomatic failures, like the canceled meeting with Senator Marco Rubio, as signs of mischances. The lack of clear communication from the Prime Minister's office has left Canadians uneasy. In moments like these, silence isn't neutral. It creates a vacuum, and vacuums fill with fear. Carney needs to speak directly, regularly, and clearly to Canadians. The broader battle, Canada's identity, on trial. This is no longer just about trade. It's about who we are. Trump's America First doctrine seeks to divide, destabilize, and dominate. Canada's values, multilateralism, inclusion, social stability, stand in stark contrast. And now we must defend those values with economic armor. What comes next? Canada's next moves will define the decade. Trump thought 35% tariffs would break Canada's spine. Instead, they stiffen our resolve. He thought he'd trigger surrender. He triggered resistance. From the unions to premiers, from the factories to Parliament Hill, the message is unanimous. We're not for sale. We won't be intimidated. And we won't be broken. This is Canada's economic awakening. And we have Donald Trump to thank for it. Let's be clear. What Donald Trump unleashed with his 35% blanket tariff wasn't just another economic scuffle. It was a declaration of economic war. But what he didn't expect was that this time, Canada didn't blink. We didn't fold. We didn't beg. We built. What began as a panic has evolved into policy. What began as a gut punch has hardened into a national mission. Provincial powerhouses step up. A $2 billion homegrown now initiative aimed at reshoring manufacturing and reducing U.S. dependency by 40% over the next 5 years. And it's not just Ontario. Alberta is fast-tracking its pipeline and processing projects, aiming to bypass American transit bottlenecks by expanding its export routes through the West Coast and into Asian markets. Saskatchewan is bolstering domestic fertilizer production, aiming to become a global supplier free of U.S. regulatory interference. British Columbia, they're leveraging their ports to build an entirely new shipping nexus to India, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Trump didn't just trigger a trade war. He triggered Canada's decentralization of U.S. reliance. And once it's gone, it's not coming back. Supply chains reimagined. Canadian companies are no longer waiting for government orders. They're acting. Major grocers are accelerating agreements with domestic farmers and processors. Tech startups are launching Canada-first platforms to trace products and highlight domestic sourcing. Even banks are rolling out Patriot bonds, low-interest vehicles meant to finance small business adaptation in the face of Trump's tariffs. One Vancouver-based entrepreneur summed it up perfectly. Trump made me realize my entire business was vulnerable. Now I source everything from Quebec and Alberta. I sleep better. The supply chain revolution is underway, not because it's easy, but because it's essential. Labor unions, the unexpected backbone. For decades, labor unions and conservative governments in Canada rarely saw eye to eye. But Trump's economic aggression has united strange bedfellows. Unifor, COOP, and the Canadian Labour Congress have found common ground with provincial leaders across the spectrum. Their shared message? Protect Canadian workers. Punish corporate flight. Prioritize resilience over cheap outsourcing. In one viral moment, a Windsor union leader held up a U.S. part rejected at the border and declared, "This part won't fly." And neither will this policy. What used to be political infighting has become a war council. Because nothing unites like a common threat. And Trump handed Canada one on a silver platter. The cultural front. Pride meets policy. What makes this different from past trade disputes isn't just the economics. It's the culture. Across Canadian cities, something is shifting. Local restaurants are refusing American ingredients. Breweries are launching tariff ale and maple resistance lager. Artists are releasing protest music. Indie documentaries are already in production chronicling this era of economic sovereignty. Even in schools, teachers are introducing case studies about global trade and Canadian resilience. Young Canadians are being taught not to fear disruption, but to prepare, adapt, and lead. It's a cultural reckoning, one that has awoken generations to the price and power of independence. America's miscalculation, global fallout. While Trump's team may have thought they were isolating Canada, what they actually did was alarm the entire G7. France's president called the tariff arbitrary and dangerous. Germany's foreign ministry said it violated the spirit of cooperation. Even Mexico, no stranger to Trump's hostility, signaled support for Canada's position. Privately, Japan and South Korea have opened back-channel talks with Ottawa, eager to strike new trade pathways that avoid Washington altogether. The White House thought this move would make the world choose sides. The world is choosing, but not the side Trump wanted. The media strategy, contrast in leadership. While Trump holds rambling press conferences attacking disloyal allies and bragging about leverage, Mark Carney continues to host daily briefings with data, clarity, and confidence. The difference couldn't be starker. One man yells, the other governs. When asked why Canada hadn't retaliated immediately, Carney replied, "We don't play chess by flipping the board." His calm demeanor, often criticized as dull, is now Canada's most powerful diplomatic weapon. While Trump tries to dominate headlines, Carney quietly builds headlines of trust. July 21st. Deadline or distraction? The clock ticks toward July 21st. The date Trump set for a deal before his 35% tariffs go full throttle. But Canadian officials have made it clear. A deal made under duress is not a deal worth signing. As one high-ranking diplomat put it, we don't respond to hostage notes. Instead, Canada's negotiators are preparing a dual-front strategy. 1. Economic buffer zones. Funding sectors hit hardest by American supply shocks. 2. Strategic retaliation. Targeted tariffs that avoid self-inflicted harm, but deliver maximum pressure on vulnerable U.S. districts. The message is crystal clear. Canada is preparing for the long haul, not the next headline. The real stakes, more than just dollars. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't just about economics. It's about whether a small democracy can withstand pressure from a superpower gone rogue. It's about whether economic extortion becomes a legitimate tool in global diplomacy. It's about whether Trump's doctrine of break and bully becomes normalized. Canada's stand isn't just for Canada. It's for every ally, every smaller nation, every trading partner watching this unfold and asking, if this works on Canada, who's next? The final blow, Canada's strategic retaliation plan. Sources inside the Department of Finance confirm that Canada's counter-tariffs will likely hit U.S. pharmaceutical companies, agricultural exports like soy and pork, software and digital services. But that's just part one. Part two? Canada is working with Europe to introduce a fair trade surcharge on U.S. companies operating in their jurisdictions, unless Trump reverses course. Canada is also considering invoking the WTO's rarely used Article XXI, a security exemption that allows trade restrictions in the face of economic warfare. This wouldn't just match Trump's move. It would isolate it. The closing message. Canada has a choice to make. This is the moment. A 35% tariff is not a policy. It's a provocation, a dare, a line in the sand. And Canada must decide, respond with fear or respond with forceful calm. Every premier, every business owner, every worker, every voter, this is your moment to choose. Because the world is watching. And the message we send now will echo for decades. We will not be bullied. We will build. Trump thought he could rattle us. He thought the 35% tariff would send us crawling to the White House begging for mercy. Instead, he sparked the most unified, creative, and determined response Canada has seen in a generation. We will not kneel. We will not crack. And we will not stop until this country stands taller, stronger, and more self-reliant than ever before. This isn't just a trade war anymore. This is an economic revolution. And Canada? Canada is just getting started.